Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me this evening is a phenomenal woman that I had the pleasure of recently meeting across social media lines. She is a kingdom identity and business alignment coach, wife, mom, Mimi, but most importantly, just a woman of God who's out here trying to change the world in a way that only God has equipped her to do so. She's taking time out of her very busy schedule to hang out with us this evening to share a little bit of her story, a little bit of her journey, with the hopes of encouraging and inspiring others, especially when it comes to dealing with the challenges and storms of life that we all go through in some fashion or form. So it is my privilege and honor, ladies, and introduce to you our very special guest this evening, Miss Karla Callan. Karla, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we jump into our segments for this evening, I do want to give you an opportunity to share with our audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do. Kind of give us a snippet of who is Karla Callan.
Yes, I am Karla Callan. I am from Portland, Oregon, born and raised, but now I reside in Seattle, Washington. And who I am today is I am a frontline kingdom warrior for the kingdom of God. I do a lot of different things in His kingdom. It was very recently that He had me start a full-on ministry. So I do deliverance. I am actually now on the actual deliverance map, so that people in the Seattle area or Portland area can actually look up deliverance, anyone really, and they can reach out to me. And it's free. Nobody is charged or anything like that, because I am a big believer in Jesus is free, and
Mm-hmm.
getting free of strongholds and different things that doors we've opened up to. We shouldn't have to pay for that. Our freedom and our salvation, Jesus already paid, and so I do that. I do speak my testimony. People reach out because of that and ask for assistance. I didn't really come out to decide that I was going to specialize in this area, but God has kind of dropped people in this area over to me. So I do a lot. I work with a lot of people who are either under some type of like occult witchcraft attacks, or people who are coming out of like the new age and witchcraft and how to break free the same way that I had to. So my background was I grew up in generational witchcraft. My great grandmother practiced voodoo. Uh, Eventually, when I was a child, she imparted something into me. I started being able to have supernatural gifts that aren't normal. But then at the same time, I was raised in organized religion. I was born into the Jehovah Witnesses. So I kept the supernatural abilities very quiet. But later on in life, I got into witchcraft. I spent 18 years practicing and then moved into the new age. And then that's when Jesus plucked me out of that. And so ever since then, I have really, I spent time building this amazing relationship with God and building this amazing faith and learning to trust and surrender to Him. And then that's when He presented my calling and what I was going to be doing for His kingdom. And so now, it took. Nothing comes quick with God sometimes because He has to train you and teach you, and there's things that He has to break off of you and things like that. And so it just now is when I'm starting to walk in my full purpose. So I'm just now coming out of my shell. I spent a lot of time training and hiding and learning the different things that He was going to allow me to do. And so now, as of it, within the last year, He has really been pushing me out to start walking in my purpose. So that is what I'm up to right now.
Awesome, awesome, and I love how you just started out in these very first few moments speaking about sharing Jesus and doing so in a manner that is not necessarily income driven, but just
Yeah.
understanding that Jesus Himself is free, and you
Yeah.
want to be able to offer that to others, as we respectfully deal with our different strongholds and things like that. Some, of course, are in more deeper strongholds than others, and so for God to pivot you in that way to be able to do such a thing, I think is great work. And that's not a knock for anybody who is a Christian, entrepreneur, if you will, speaker, author, or what have you, and you happen to charge money for different things. It's just understanding first and foremost what the purpose of the work is, and understanding that God will open doors if he chooses to do so financially, if that's what's meant to be birth from that gift. But that shouldn't just be your only motivation for doing it or for sharing him, basically seeing how much I can make off of that. So I'm glad you started to set the tone right out the gate about this. But and I think that's something that's like, of course, that's easily a conversation for another day. But just I thought that was really critical that you pointed that out, and I appreciate you doing so. So I do want to delve in a little bit more, of course, because you gave us a lot, just right out the gate, as far as some of the strongholds that you had to battle with at an early age. And whenever I have people on the show, this is again something that I'd like to take time in doing, is reflecting back in the beginning, if you will, of that journey, in the beginning of that story, because I think a lot of things that happen early on, people we meet, encounters that we have, etc., kind of sets the stage of what ultimately God is positioning you for later in life. We may not make that connection early on, but that doesn't mean that that this was by accident. In fact, a lot of it is by design for you to go through what you go through. And in many cases, what a lot of people don't catch is it's not even about you. Sometimes God will take you through some stuff because he specifically sets you up in just a way so you could be prepared to pour into other people years down the road that need to hear from you, but you have to kind of go through that training ground, if you will, that stormy moment, if you will. But the difference is you don't have to do it by yourself. He was there all along, kind of working you through that situation so that you could be equipped today to do the works that I just already have spoken of, that you're pouring into people, not only in the immediate area, but of course making yourself available to anybody pretty much that can reach out to you. So that said, if you would, take us back to that beginning. Take us back to those early days of your coming up, and share with us, in more detail, like what was it like for you growing up, the way that you did, fond memories that you have, as well as, again, any challenges that you'd like to share. You can do that as well. Kind of give us that backdrop of where your story begins.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Portland. I grew up with both my parents. They are still married to this day, like 55 years, I think now is what they're on. um, and I had a really good childhood. I would never say that this was again, my parents didn't do anything to me that set me into the trajectory that I took. It was more or less being born into organized religion. The Jehovah Witnesses is a cult. It is very much. I know that people, every time I speak about this, people come for me, and I've had to get over it because I used to ever speak the name of what I was brought into. But finally, the Holy Spirit, convicted me and said, if you're going to be on the front line and speak, then speak the whole truth, and don't be afraid, of the people that come for you. And so that was pretty much, a door that opened into my life, was through organized religion. And then, I had the opposite side. My great grandmother was not a Jehovah Witness or anything like that, and she practiced voodoo. So that opened up a door in my life. And there was a real incident that happened. Like, I grew in my family, we all knew that she practiced. We all knew that, like, we heard stories. We would like, my family would talk about the stories of her, like when she was in Texas hexing people and all kinds of stuff. And my mom had told me a story, like, about she went to visit her, and my sister was like a baby. My sister is 6 years older than me. And like, my mom said the ceiling opened up and this light was shining on my sister, and it was in the middle of the night. And my mom freaked out, jumped on top of her, and started praying over her, and it shut the ceiling. And she grabbed my sister and ran out of my great grandmother's house, and she never would ever go back to her house. So fast forward, when I was around my great grandmother, she was in her 90s, so she wasn't really practicing probably. And she also was living with my great aunt, her daughter, who was a Jehovah Witness. So I'm pretty sure she wasn't really doing it outright in front of everybody. I never saw any, things that you would use for, witchcraft or anything like that. But there was an occasion that my great aunt called my mother because she was levitating, and my aunt had went in to check on her, and she was levitating like probably 3 to 4 feet off the bed, but she also wasn't awake. She was dead, like in some type of trance, and my aunt couldn't wake her up. She also couldn't get her down, so she called my mom. My mom, I was a little kid, like probably 7 or 8, so my mom made me go. So I ended up having to sit in the kitchen while they were doing this. And I had no idea what they were doing. And my mom really didn't speak about it until I was older. And then she told me, like, oh, remember when we had to go over there? This is what happened. And the other thing that would happen when I would go, because I would go over to visit her frequently, and my mom would be like, oh, hug, your great grandmother. And what we know now about like the transfer of like spirits and things, I'm like, why are you allowing me to hug this lady? But also, I would sit down at the table with her, and she would make these very, very strange clicking noises. And it was like this very rhythmic clicking sound. And it would almost like I would tune out and like kind of trance out. And then I would snap back like to reality and be like, what the heck was that? And I was a little kid. And this is when, after she passed away, that's when I started to have these crazy supernatural abilities and things. And so that was kind of my background, but that's not really when Satan really got a hold of me. It was after, as a teenager, I encountered a sexual assault that happened to me. And it happened when I was 14 years, and it was like a fellow person that I didn't know at school, but I knew of. So after that assault happened is really when the doors blew wide open, because through that assault, that trauma that I experienced, promiscuity entered in almost instantly. And then what also entered in was a wanting to control everything that happened to me, because in that situation, I had no control. And so by the time I got into witchcraft later on at the age of 22, I did it because I realized that through witchcraft, I could control people. I could control outcomes in situations. And so that's how the witchcraft really took a hold of me. It was about that sense of control and being able to dictate what was happening to me. But with that opened up, definitely Jezebel came in, because the control that I wanted was like completely taking over. And so that was a problem. And so the one thing I want to make clear to people that I don't think people understand is like, when you are operating in Satan's kingdom, it's not for free. You don't just get to operate and nothing happens. For everything that he gives you, whether it's money, fame, power, he's going to suck your life force from you. So that could be illnesses, addictions, you name it, chaotic. My whole life after I opened the door to witchcraft was very chaotic around me. There was always drama and always things happening, not necessarily to me, but just around me. And then also it opened up the door to like abusing alcohol, smoking weed. Like there was a lot of things that come with that. And um and that's kind of how I spent, my life, was basically trying to control situations, but also being tormented in different ways. I believe that, from day one, God always had his hand on me, because there was a lot of crazy situations that I had gotten into. There was times when I had brushes with death that like I did not die. And I didn't think about it until after I was saved. And I was like that. I'm thoroughly convinced the only reason why I never died was because God knew who I was going to be, what I was going to become, and he was not about to let Satan have me. And so that's the only reason why I'm still alive today.
Wow. Let me first, of course, stay. I appreciate your transparency and sharing as you have. I can only imagine what dealing in that realm must be like. But I think what you're speaking to right now is vital, especially when you think about the climate of today.
Hmm.
This has really been a heavy subject matter, whether it's across TV lines, social media lines, or what have you, where we're talking about people who have been out here seeking fame, seeking the big life, whether it's in the entertainment field, music, acting, or what have you, and more, we've seen people come out and talk about either being able to resist some of those situations that have come at them, or in other instances, paying the consequences of such things. So we talk about the things like you said, it's almost like you don't get to play in that realm, and there's not a price to pay for it. Yeah, you're seeking the money. Satan offers up an opportunity to test you to see, are you willing, how far are you willing to go to get it. You decide, if you end up being that person that decides to take that bite and say, yeah, I'll do it to get that money. But then what is the trade-off? What is the loss? And as you shared, whether it be a life of addiction of some sort, whether it be your sexuality being challenged in some way, or whether it just be, it doesn't even have to happen directly to you, but just the environment that's around you always being chaotic, always being toxic, if you will. So now you kind of almost have to be on guard at all times, because you just never know what's going to pop off at any given point in time. So I appreciate you pointing that out, because that's a very real thing when we talk about how it's so important that we not play, or how we not just sample, if you will, of what that life is like, because just even being in the presence of it can get on you. Just even down to like we talk about, like music. Some music is a very major way that Satan feeds into us, because we'll get caught up and listen to the beat of the song, and we get to snapping our fingers and popping our head, and it sounds good, not even realizing, not even paying attention to the actual lyrics, not even,
Hmm.
and we're singing and we're repeating it, again, because it just sounds, it has a nice flow to it, but not understanding what we're talking about, or what we are internalizing, is actually inviting that demonic presence into our space, into our hearts, into our minds. And so I think that's really critical that you point that out. And also understanding too that sometimes that connection with Satan doesn't come from you per se pursuing a particular thing like wealth and fame. Sometimes it's Satan kind of come at you at your most vulnerable moment, after a traumatic event, such as what you shared about the sexual assault. Being a teenage girl going through a sexual assault moment, again, can only imagine the trauma that's associated with that. But as you say, it stated, like in an instant, it triggered into other things like promiscuity, and just sort of kind of wilding out, because and understandably so, in the sense that you're just trying to figure out how to process it. And
Hmm.
so to get off into those things sometimes makes you forget about it, makes you not think about it. But Satan is welcoming it, trying to treat it as, this is what you need to do to feel better, when in fact it's actually taking you down a road that you don't need to be going down. So again, that's the term, the trick of the enemy, so to speak, of making you think something is good. And then the last thing I want to add to this is the God component, because I'm sure we have listeners who are thinking, well, if God was supposedly there all along, why would he allow you to go through what you go through and just stand by and watch it happen? And as I tried to share at the top of the show, it's like sometimes God will allow you to go through it, not because he's celebrating it, or or finding joy in your misery or pain or anything like that. But a lot of times it's, one, because he's setting the stage for the works that you're going to do later on in life. But also sometimes he allows us to go through those storms and challenges that we go through, because he's trying to see, at what point are you going to stop trying to fix it yourself, and instead rely upon him to handle it for you. Thus, when you said about the attraction to the witchcraft, was the thing about the control factor. I can control outcomes. I can control the scenario. That was attractive to me. And God is saying, I'm in control. you need to release trying to control it all, trying to control the outcomes, trying to control the settings. Let that be released to me. And so that's why, for our listeners who don't quite get that, sometimes he has to let us kind of go through that process. And as I've said many times before, kind of repeating after my mom, kind of bump that head until you get to that point where you say, okay, I don't have the ability to do this by myself. I need help at a higher level, at a level that is not like me. And of course, that's where he steps in. He's divine. He's all powerful. He's all knowing. He has the ability to do what no man can do. And so when you made that connection and you said, hey, when I finally clicked and made that decision to give my life to Christ and follow his lead, then that's when the process begins of things changing in the right direction for the right reason. So again, those are very critical things that you pointed out, and I appreciate you doing that because it's such a valuable lesson that we all need to grasp from this, regardless of where you are in your respective spiritual walks. Just understanding that this is nothing to play with. Ultimately, is what it boils down to. So with that said, Karla, I mean, again, as you didn't, you had a very interesting childhood, but yet took you in a lot of different directions. And as we get older, those experiences, they still come, as we get older and, new encounters, new people that we meet. But if you live long enough, the reality is that there will come a point in time where you begin to encounter some experiences, some challenges in life that hit you a little different, hit you in a way where you don't see a way out, where you're literally trying to get out, you're trying to get over, you're trying to break free from whatever this bondage is, whatever this stranglehold is, but you don't know how to do it. Your money can't get you out of it, your connects can't get you out of it. You just feel hopeless, helpless, kind of just stuck in this spot and just really just almost in some instances just ready to give up. And so with that said, tell us about a time that's exactly how you felt, that you were in, what it felt like the walls are closing in on me. I don't know what to do with this particular situation that I'm up against. Obviously you're here today, so we can trust that God made a pathway for you to be able to have that breakthrough, but maybe in that moment you weren't quite able to see that. So if you would kind of walk us through what that experience was like for you and what was ultimately the turning point when you began to see some light at the end of the tunnel and coming out of this particular situation.
So even just how I came about to know Jesus. So there was a point in my life where I was in the practicing witchcraft, and I, through all the drama and the chaos and all of that, I had gotten to the point where I was like, you know what, like I need to change my life. I need to change who I am. And I would love to say that like Jesus was it, but that's not what happened. Really, what happened is Satan did not want to let me go. And so the new age was presented to me in a completely different way. So it wasn't presented as the new age. It was more presented as like self-help, betterment, practicing gratitude. And I want to say practicing gratitude and being thankful is not Satan's. He hijacks everything. So that has nothing to do with new age. I mean, they do practice it, but they steal everything. So that came from God, and he tells us that we should be grateful for the things that we have and that we should be thankful for the things that he gives us. So that's kind of how it was presented to me. And so then I went headfirst into this realm. And I'm not going to lie, the enticement of the new age is because it actually does work. It changed me a lot. I did become a better person. But then it opened me up into more stuff. And so I kind of just took the worst of the worst and switched it for something better, but it still was part of Satan's world. And it got to the point that while I was in the new age that I had started going down different rabbit holes, and this one rabbit hole that I went down was like about aliens. And I was watching all of these videos about aliens, and I'm just like, oh, these things are real. But I was kind of like, what are they? Like, I honestly, like, even though I had nothing to do with religion, because by the time I was a teenager, I wouldn't go to the Jehovah Witness thing. I was done. So I wouldn't pick up any religion. It wasn't that I didn't believe in God. I believed in God, but I didn't want nothing to do with any type of religion. And so during this time, I knew that like God did not create aliens, but it was like trying to figure out where they fit in. And it happened to be that God started using my YouTube, like he hijacked my actual YouTube and started presenting things to me that I would have never found or looked at. And one of them was this, it was like some type of a convention, and the person was speaking about aliens, and he was talking about um he said, did it ever occur to you that these aliens are demons? And what was crazy is I was sitting at work, and the moment that he said that, in my entire body, everything, I knew he was right. And so then I'm like, wait a minute, if aliens are demons, like something's wrong. And then he made this one comment and he said, Satan hates you so much, he doesn't care how you die. It could be a car accident, a drug overdose. You can live to old age. He does not care. The only thing he cares about is that you don't know the truth and you don't know how to get free through Jesus. And I would still like to took that and was like, I need Jesus, but I didn't. I got really mad and was just like, wait a minute, why do you hate me? Like, I don't even know you. And so I went on this like exploration of who Satan was. Why did he hate me? And what was he trying to do to me? And it was through that that God was allowing me to see that Satan is real. One of the things that I also had to realize, because the Jehovah Witness religion, they don't believe in hell or like heaven like a normal Christian. So they don't believe that there's a hell. So my whole life growing up, that's where it's messed up, is because I literally grew up thinking that my actions had no repercussions, because they teach a whole different philosophy about like you just won't make it into their new system. And so in my mind as a teenager, I rationalized it like, so what? I'm going to be dead anyway, so how would I know? Like, what does it matter? So I grew up thinking there was no hell, there was no repercussions. I would never pay for anything I was doing. And so once I could have realized that hell was real, Satan was real, Satan hated me, he was trying to, that's when I remember just saying, there's got to be a way out. That's the end game. And it was in that moment that Jesus hijacked my YouTube with other stuff, and he presented me with this one preacher. It was one preacher who literally has like 380 some sermons. And he gave me this one preacher, and it was like this one day at work, this sermon popped up. And I had never in my life watched a sermon. I had never in my life heard gospel music, because in the Jehovah Witness religion, you're not allowed to go to other churches. You can't listen to outside teachings, and you're also not allowed to listen to gospel music, but you can listen to secular music and like watch secular movies. You can go to secular concerts and those things, but you cannot have anything of God that they don't force feed you. And so basically when this happened, I ended up one night, I had heard this preacher talk about his testimony, and he talked about how he was drunk in a club and he was sitting on the bar stool, and the Holy Spirit told him, get up and leave. And he did. And when he left, he said he didn't know at the time, but from that moment, his life was changed. And so in my mind, I was like, if he could do this, I wonder if I could. And so this one night, I was like, I had went through my normal, new age practices that day. I had drank a couple drinks because it was a Friday night. I had smoked weed, all of this. But, but God did not care, because at midnight, this idea came onto me, and it was so strong. And it was like, go in your room and just cry out to him and see what happens. And so at midnight in the dark, I went in my room, I got on my knees, and I said, you know what? I was like, this is what I'm going to tell you. If you heal me, because I knew that I had this trauma, and I was like, I don't want to go to counseling. I'm not taking a pill. I want you to take this, like radically heal me from the trauma. Take away the want to drink alcohol, the smoking weed, anything, all of it. If you do this, I said, I will never walk away from you. I will never turn my back on you. And so in that moment, like nothing really happened. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was thinking like bells and whistles would go off, or like, I don't know, like a dove would appear, but nothing happened like that. But I began to cry. And this cry, there was this one point where this like very guttural sob came out. And after that, a peace came over me. And then I got up and I went to bed. And I want to say sometimes you hear testimonies and people are like, everything changed in that instant. It didn't. But I knew that God was in control at that point, and I knew that when He told me whatever I was to stop doing, when He said it, that was the end. And so I continued with my life. But what I do believe happened in that night was that what He did was He delivered me from the trauma, because that was the stronghold. And so once He delivered me from the trauma, He was able to break everything else off of me when it was time.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's very powerful. Again, thank you for your
Mhm.
transparency and sharing that, because what you're speaking about is a very real thing when we make that transition of giving it all to Him. A lot of times there's a specific event or perhaps a series of events that have been going on in our lives. We've internalized it, we've held it in, somehow thinking that if we do all of these various different activities or what have you, that it's just going to go away. But it was never going away. You were carrying
Mm-mm.
around for years this trauma of an assault, and it was holding you down. It was holding you back, and as you said, the enemy in the meantime, he's throwing all kind of things at you, whether it's this new age, whether it's again, all of these different things to be distractors for you, to make you to basically kind of help you to cope, to kind of cover it up, if you will, deceiving you and making you feel like you'll feel better after this. It's gonna be all right, knowing good and well that he has no good intentions for you. He's not interested in you feeling better. And you eloquently stated, he doesn't care how you die. It doesn't have to be some dramatic way. He just wants you. He wants you to just be taken out. Hopefully, that in that moment in time, that when it happens, it took place prior to you ever getting to know God, getting to understand what it means to be in relationship with Christ, understanding that you do have an out. And it's like it's crazy because we'll go through all of these motions a lot of times of trying to figure out how to get through or break through challenging storms of life, when all along it just simply required us to surrender it all to God. If we would just give it to Him. And so as you described this moment, I'm visualizing it, you know, you hearing from you making this decision to say, you know what, God, if you do this, if you do take this away from me, I promise I'll never, and we've all, many of us have been guilty of that in a sense of saying, I promise I'll never do something again. I promise I will do something if you just do this, and we don't follow through. But this was God realizing that you were at that breaking point, and he allowed you in that moment to be free and express, and you expressed yourself very aggressively. You take this, you take this, you take this. You left nothing on the table. It was almost borderline demanding. If you are who I've been hearing, or you say that you are, you show me, you prove to me that that if I'm going to commit at this level, that this is worth my while. If you could take all of this that I've been carrying around inside of me, I'm gonna change my ways. I'm gonna follow you. You'll never have to worry about me going in any other direction. And I love how you set the scene, because a lot of times people are thinking that it's going to be this dramatic moment of, like you said, the doves in the air, the fireworks blowing, some roaring thunderous voice from the sky, and it's not to say that none of those things can't happen. It's just that, again, and this is a lot of this is programmed from television or other material that makes you think that this has all happened. All it, but ultimately, what it all came down to was you just dropping to your knees, crying out, and then letting God move in you from there. And as I just said, there was no, you know, thunderous music or voices or anything like that. It was just I got on my knees, I cried out, and then I went to bed. And then the rest is history in terms of
Yeah.
the beginning steps of the progress. And like you said, it wasn't like you just woke up the next morning and everything was all perfect and fine. It was still a process. So for our listeners, we want you to understand that we're not trying to suggest that even if you replicated what Karla just spoke of, that and then the next morning everything was great and I lived happily ever after. There's still a because what happened and what was going on in that moment is you ignited your healing process by you letting that out of you, by you freeing yourself of that. You were in essence not only saying I'm not going to carry this around anymore, but in many ways you were in essence actually offering forgiveness, even though you didn't speak directly to the young man at the time who did that to you. By you letting it go, by you giving it out, that was your act of forgiving, of you saying, I'm not going to hold this in me anymore. And that's when you get to ignite that healing process. That's when it starts. So, as with any wound, as with any, thing of that nature, it's going to take time to heal. But you can't start the healing process if you never get the treatment that's necessary. You can't, instead, it just rots inside of you. And just like anything, if it rots, it spoils, it gets infectious, it gets toxic. So if that can happen to a piece of meat on a counter that's left out, what do you think can happen? Same concept of it can happen inside of you. And it can affect you all through your body and everything that you touch and everything that you do. So I love the illustration because it's a very real thing. It's kind of one of those things for our listeners. If you know, you know. If you've ever been in that rock bottom moment, whatever that looked like for you, and you let that thing go to God, what Karla is speaking to is very real in the sense that that peace that comes over you. It's hard to put into words. It's just one of those, but it is a very real thing. There's a peace that comes over you that just says, I just this weight that I've been carrying just was lifted off of me, and I just feel different. I'm not all 100%, but I can tell something is happening, and it's happening in a good way. Because I got this up off of me. So I'm glad that you shared it in the detail that you did, because I really want our listeners to capture what this looks like and how this feels and why we're stressing the importance of, no matter what it is that you've gone through in life, no matter the trauma or the challenge or the storms or whatever, you have to make that connection. You have to get into that relationship with Christ and let that thing go, because we just weren't equipped to handle all of that on our own. We just weren't. That doesn't mean that we're weak, weak individuals, that we can't take anything, but God gave us a capacity to do so much up to a point for a reason. If we could do everything he could do, then what would be the what would be the need to call on to him? But he's saying, I'm right here for you. And I love how you shared earlier about there were some near death experiences that you had, and you probably were sitting there thinking to yourself, I shouldn't have survived that. How did I possibly make it through that? And it's because he was there all along. He just had to let things play out in a certain way, but never allowing the enemy to get you to the point where he could literally take you out. He was never going to permit that. And the enemy doesn't have that kind of strength to do it without God. He would have to have God's permission to make that happen. And obviously, God wasn't going to give him permission to take you out, because he had a greater assignment for you, and you belong to him, most importantly. So the devil wasn't going to have any say in all of that. So again, appreciate you sharing that. That is very, very powerful. So with that said, Karla, I mean, obviously we've talked about some very intense strongholds that you've had to break free from. But the reality is that sometimes storms are like that. But then there are times when storms are just the common day to day nuances, life and type stuff. That being said, if you would share with us, when you do find yourself going through difficult times, now that you are in the space that you are right now, in relationship with Christ, seeking him, following him, but still recognizing that even believers go through stuff. What is it that you like to do, or what's that regimen or the routine that works best for you when you do find yourself having one of those days, facing a challenging situation? What is that thing or series of things that you like to do that kind of helps you process it in a healthy way now, and in a productive way, so you can ultimately get to a point where you can figure out this is the plan of action that needs to be enacted for me to get through this particular situation. What's that look like for you?
So the first and foremost is I think that a lot of times people they have the kind of mentality that they take an defense. So what happens is like, they pray, they plead, they beg, whatever, when they're in the fight, when they're being beat up. But what I learned very early on is to take an offense. So I started realizing how important it is to armor up every day. So that's, spending time with God, reading your Bible, worshiping, praying, like making this the first thing that you do to start your day. So many times we're like, I'm too busy to do this. I don't have time to do this. I used to kind of start with the expectation that I had to spend hours and hours with God because I would hear these stories about people like, I pray for 5 hours. And I'm like, I don't even have that kind of time. But really, it's not about that. It is about making him the first thing when you wake up. Instead of getting on your phone and scrolling, read a scripture verse. Meditate on it while you're getting dressed for work. Put on some worship music and sing to God while you're getting ready in the morning. When you're in the car, pray out loud to him. It doesn't matter that people think you're talking to yourself. They don't know if you're on your phone or what you're doing. So who cares? But it's in those times, even when you're busy, you can make time for God. And so for me, it was that one of the things I teach the people that I coach is always taking an offense. Through taking an offense, you build up your spiritual armor so that when you are being attacked, you already have the weapons you need to fight. And that's the most important thing, is that making sure that you already have implemented what it's going to take for you to fight in that spiritual battle. And then also finding the things that you like that connect you to God the most. For me, I love to sing. And so that is a very special thing between me and God where I love to sing to him. I love to turn on worship music. And what people don't realize is how spiritual music truly is. And so when I turn on music and I'm singing to him, it changes my entire mental. I can go from being literally ticked off at someone to spending time singing to God to now it's completely gone.
Hmm.
And I feel at peace. And I'm like, you know what? You can be mad as you want to be. That's your problem. But I'm going to go worship and I'm going to go give it to God because I know that in the end, God will go back and work on you. I don't have to work on you. I have something better that works out way better for me. And so I think that you have to kind of know like what's your thing, like what type of relationship. It comes down to you have to build a very, very deep relationship with God. You have to build that closeness, that connection. And so for me, singing to him, I also recommend to people to journal. One of the most important things that, like, they don't really teach you, they say like pray, but they never say like journal. The very first way that I learned how to pray was because like when I got saved, I didn't know how to pray and I also just couldn't do it. And so one day the Holy Spirit told me, pick up that note. And I picked up this notebook and he just said, now write to me. And so every morning I started writing to God. And through the writing, I learned how to pray the different names of God for the specific things that I was praying about. And through that writing, because I continued to do it, I have probably 30 or 40 journals now that are done. And I continue to do this every day. And through God started speaking to me. It became a way that he communicated with me to the point where I would ask him a question in my journal and then sit there. And all of a sudden, after I don't know how long it would be, it could be a minute, 2 minutes, whatever. I would start writing and I would notice that this message was for me. And I would notice that the words were different. And instead of me, saying God, blah, blah, it would be taught, he would be talking to me through my writing and saying, my child, this and this and this. He would correct me. He would encourage me. He would tell me my next steps through
Mm-hmm.
journaling. And so I think that that's important as you're building your relationship with God. You got to find your niche with God, because everybody can tell you what they do, but unless you start spending time with them and really making that space for your relationship with Him, you'll never find that intimacy that's your thing with Him.
I think that's very well said. I love your approach. The three key things that stand out to me, and which one I talk about all the time, of course, is the offense approach. Um, Instead of you waiting for something to go wrong, instead of you waiting for that bad day to happen, what are you doing on a regular basis that positions you in such a way that whenever that storm comes, because we know it's not a matter of if, but when, but have you armored yourself up? Have you taken the time to, like you said, spend time with God, to put on that full armor so that if I'm just going about my day, going about my business, and then all of a sudden, boom, out of nowhere, this situation comes up before me, yeah, it may shake me a little bit, it may rattle me a little bit, but it doesn't take me out because I was prepared for it, and I actively prepare for it on a day to day basis. It's a part of my lifestyle, in what I do, and that lifestyle is not just about saying a prayer each morning. It's like you said, it's about the worship. That's a lifestyle. It's not just a random act of doing. It's spending the time in the Word. All of that is a combination of things that when you put them all collectively together, it's critical for you to be ready, because spiritual warfare is a very real thing, and the more you get and more you elevate in your relationship with Christ, the enemy is also elevating his attack against you. So he's not going to stop, and in fact he's going to intensify his efforts more and more as you're growing in Christ. And so I'm glad that you pointed out that importance of being on the offense and not always being on the defense. Another thing that stood out to me was when you talked about your journaling, and you
Mhm.
say how and I know everybody may or may not be into journaling, but I think the key thing that I liked was you say, hey, I start out journaling, and then I'll get to a point and I'll just stop and I'll pause and I'll wait to hear. One of the biggest mistakes that a lot of us make, even as believers, is that whether we're journaling, whether we're in prayer or whatever, we'll talk, we'll talk, we'll talk, we'll talk, we'll talk, but we never take a moment to just pause and say, okay, God, what do you have to say about that? We'll pray to him about this, that, or the other. Then we'll begin to tell him how to answer our prayer. So it's kind of like, well, why did you go to me to seek help, but then you're gonna tell me how to help you, even though you've admitted before you even started that I was the only one who could help you, which means that you don't have the answer yourself. But so you're trying to play both sides of the fence. When in fact you put it out there, you lay it, make it clear as to what it is that you want. He already knows what you want. He's just enjoying the fact that you feel safe in sharing that with him. But at some point, you have to do what you stated. You have to have that moment of pause and say, "Okay, Lord, speak to me. Tell me where to go with this." And as you shared, sometimes it could be as quick as a minute or two. Sometimes it could be days. Sometimes it could be weeks. It could be a lengthy period of time before he reveals that to you, because you might not be in a space where you're ready to receive the answer to this question. There may be some prep work that has to go on before he can fully give you the answer, so you'll know how to handle it, so you'll know how to process it. So don't get caught up in the time. Don't try to put God on a microwave schedule, so to speak. Give it to him, and then sit back and wait for him to speak with you, because when I was playing out you talking about the journaling, and also about just talking to him and not being ashamed of what people might think, because especially like if you're in a car or something like that, you're talking, they don't know who you're talking to, whatever. I've done it in just going for a walk, when I'm walking the dog. That's usually my time early in the morning where I'm talking to God, and just like I'm talking to you right now, I'm literally walking down the street talking just like this. But there have been moments when I've been talking to him and perhaps even seeking him, kind of talking some things out that I'm trying to process. And then in the midst of that conversation that I'm having with him, but looking like to others that I'm talking to myself, at some point, and I've had this happen many times where my conversation will change and I'll find myself answering the very question that I gave to him, not because I came up with it, but because he's pouring it, he's dropping it into me, and by the time I'm done with the walk, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do, or oh, this is what I was supposed to get out of this. It may sound crazy if you've never experienced it, but again, this is a very real thing. So it's not something to be ashamed of. It's just something that you have to kind of be bold, if you will, in your faith, and just do it, whatever that is, wherever that is. There's no specific, and that was the third part of what I wanted to highlight that you said was it's not a one way pathway to establish intimacy and relationship with God. One person has this way, another person has this way, another person has this way. It's not that one way is better than the other. It's just that God forms unique relationships, unique ways to communicate. For some people, God is well known for talking to them through music. Somebody else, it could be a bird in a tree. It could be a random, it could be messages that come from total strangers that have no idea what you're going through, what you're thinking about, anything, but they could just in passing say something, and you'll immediately know that God spoke through them to speak to you to deal with whatever that situation was that you're dealing with. So he has a multitude of ways to do that. So for our listeners, what we want you to take away from this part of the show is that if you don't currently have a way to, how you're communicating with God or how you're doing it, you could take little nuggets, little things from that we're sharing as a starting point, but ultimately that relationship, that's personalized between you and him, and how you and him decide how you all are going to connect, how you all are going to communicate. So again, I appreciate you breaking it down like that, because that's definitely a very solid approach to, again, establishing that intimacy with Christ, and being able to just, again, deal with the day-to-day life of challenges that are going to come. Even if you are a hardcore believer in church 7 days a week on your knees, like you said, 4 or 5 hours praying, that doesn't, excuse you from going through. You're going to still go through in some fashion or form. So Karla, as you reflect back, on just your life overall as a whole, the ups and downs and everything in between that you've dealt with, if you had a chance to speak to the younger Karla, you could sit across from her, the Karla that, had the trauma of sexual assault, had the trauma of being under the strongholds of witchcraft and all that it produced, and really not knowing what to do with all that, just feeling like you were in just sort of a chaotic, kind of out of control situation, and having no clear direction as to what all this meant, or even how to break free from it. What would you say to her that you believe would have been some good words of encouragement, some advisement that you wish she would have known then that you know now, as well as to our listeners who might be perhaps going through some of the things that you talked to? They might be under the stronghold of witchcraft, or under the stronghold of a trauma that they have not let go. What would be your words of advisement to younger Karla as well as to those listeners?
I think I probably would have told her it's okay to heal. And I think I would have told her that through this, God still loves you. God loves you so much that he's going to bring you back to him. But in all honesty, I have to be 100% transparent, because I don't think I would change my experiences that I went through. And the reason why is because there was a point in time after I got saved that I asked God, like, if you knew that I was going to do this, if you knew I was going to change my life, I was going to accept you, I was going to walk in this amazing calling and purpose, and I was going to live out this destiny you planned for me, why didn't you do this when I was 20, when I was 30? Why did you wait so long? And you know what? the answer I got was not what I was expecting. And the answer was very straight up. And he told me, because I knew it wouldn't break you.
Mm.
He said, I knew everything you would go through, you would one day have a gift of being able to adapt to anyone going through something because of so many different things that happened, that you'll be able to share any of these stories with someone and show who I am through these stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so once he told me that, instead of feeling like, oh, I woulda, shoulda, coulda, I started wearing my whole life, my testimony, who I am today. I started wearing it proudly like a badge. My testimony is the girl who died the day that she got baptized. That girl, the old me, died in that water, and up came this woman that I am today. So I wear my testimony and the things that I went through as a badge of honor, because these are things that now I can speak out and people can relate to and say, you know what, I'm going through that. I went through this. Oh, this happened to her. Oh, she understands. And that gives me the ability to be able to help people. People feel extremely comfortable coming to me and telling me things that they would never tell anyone, because they know that I've been through it. But also, God gave me a gift of like, people don't feel like she's judging or she's going to turn around and ever use this against me. For me, when I hear people's stories and I hear the things that they went through, it's not, it's honestly like I retain it long enough to be able to get what the Holy Spirit wants me to get out of it to help them. But other than that, it goes in one ear and out the other. And so I guess, yes, I would love to tell my younger self, like, you're going to get through this, and all of the stuff that you're going through in the end is going to make you rise out of the garbage and become this beautiful warrior that God is training up to help others. That would be probably the only thing that I would tell my younger self, is that there's a purpose and there's a reason for all of this.
I love that. I love that. I think that's very important for people to understand that, because we oftentimes get in those conversations. If I could turn back the clock, what I would or what I would not do. And while there are certain things that you might say, you know what, I would have rather not gone down certain pathways or whatever. Having a relationship with Christ, what that does is it helps you to not just focus on the discomfort or the inconvenience of those moments, but to be able to look at those past incidents again as far back as childhood and ask yourself, was there something in that experience that when I fast forward to today, to the right now, as I'm walking in my purpose, that had it not been for that, I might have not been effective over here? You just spoke about how you're able to communicate with various people from all walks of life, having gone through some stuff, and how they feel so comfortable in sharing with you the way that they do, sharing things that they may not have even shared with their immediate family or perhaps nobody. And yeah, maybe some of that is because of just the way you carry yourself or whatever, but a lot of it also has to do with your relatability. They don't feel like, as you stated, that you're here to judge me, that you're being raw, you're being transparent, just as you are tonight, being raw, being transparent, not putting on any facades or anything like that, not trying to be super saney or anything like that. You're acknowledging the fact that, yeah, I went through some stuff, I made some poor decisions along the way, there was some craziness in it all, but when I think about where I am now and I think about who the God that I am in relationship with, I realize that these things had to happen. So I'm not here to say I wish they didn't. If nothing more, I just wish that I understood the purpose of it all, perhaps in the earlier days, so that maybe I wouldn't have gotten as frustrated by it, or maybe I wouldn't have just got, I might have stayed in some stuff longer than I needed to, had I been on point and aware of who God is and what He was trying to do with me and through me. But yeah, but to say I wish none of those things never happened. Nothing in our lives, good or bad, happened by accident. God knows from the very moment we enter into this world to the very moment we leave it, exactly all the chain of events. Our job in the in between time is trying to figure out what is the purpose of it and how does He want me to use these various experiences and opportunities to be a blessing to other people, to do works that He specifically assigned for me. And so that's where I'm hearing that transformation happening with you, and you're saying, I'm not ashamed of it. I wear my badge proudly. I wear it proudly. And I'm also not beating myself up about it. I'm allowing myself grace. I'm saying, you know what? I didn't always make the best decisions, but at the same time, I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm not going to think that I'm now worthless or of no value to this world because my God says something different. He says the complete opposite of that. And that's why I'm not going to embrace what the enemy, because that's what the enemy wants me to do. He wants me to sit here and be feeling guilty and remorseful, if you will, of feeling remorseful in the sense that, oh, there's no way you can never be anything after you did that, or after you've gone through this, or you will never be that. He wants us to believe that kind of stuff. And if we're not careful, we'll fall victim to doing just that. But when we understand who's in control, when we understand who loves us truly, authentically, and unconditionally, we know that that's not the case. That doesn't mean that God condones bad behavior, but at the same time, He's not forsaking us. He's not walking away from us. He'll graciously pick us up, dust us off, pulls us together, and say, "Okay, we're gonna walk this thing out together. We're gonna get it right. You just stick with me and watch me do my thing." And that's what you've been doing, like you said, ever since you went down in that water and got rid of the old self and came up with the new self, and you've been walking in it ever since. You're a work in progress, growing and growing closer and closer to Him each and every day. We've been talking about this to our audience, to our listeners. We've been telling you this all along. It's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. It's step by step, growth by growth, moment by moment. Do you have moments of slip off or drop offs? Absolutely, you do. You just don't stay stuck there. That's the difference. We don't stay stuck there anymore. We get up, we dust ourselves off, and know that God is going to work it through us. Through His graces and through His mercy. So again, I appreciate you sharing that. That's very powerful. So Karla, this is, of course, been a phenomenal conversation having with you. You've definitely been a blessing to myself, to my listeners, in sharing so transparently as you have, given us some real key nuggets of wisdom to marinate on, if you will. And so I thank you and appreciate you for doing just that and pouring into us as you have, because these are difficult conversations to have, but these are necessary conversations to have, because again, the devil is real. His minions and everything about him is real, and some of it you can see, and there's a lot of it that you can't. But that doesn't mean that it's not there. So you got to be prepared. You got to put on that full armor of God each and every day. You got to establish that relationship. That's your way. That's your breakthrough from these strongholds that we've talked about this evening, along with the many others that are out there that we didn't even get to tap into. But that again, very real thing. But be on the offense, as Karla said, be on the offense and just watch God do some wonderful and awesome things. So. But as is, of course, is customary here on the Blessings in the Streets podcast, Karla, I do want to take this opportunity to celebrate you, to love on you, to lift you up. So if you got anything that's going on right now or coming up down the road, we want to hear all about it, how people can connect with you, support what you're doing, or if nothing more, just keep you lifted in prayer and how God is using you. So please do share with us what you got going on or coming up that we need to know about and get connected with.
Yeah, so the third week in January, I initially used to have a Bible study, and then once I started the ministry, it got very busy, and so I actually decided that once a month I'm going to do what's called journaling with Jesus, and it's going to be an on Zoom event where people are basically going to come on, and I'm going to show them how to start journaling and then how to hear God through your writing. And so I'm going to take them through like some exercises and stuff like that. Some of the exercises that I did that helped me, not only that, but establish my identity. One of the first things I did was I did this exercise and I asked God, like, what lies do I believe about myself? And then I asked him, what is the truth that you believe about me? And that was a game changer. So I want to share that with other people. It's a free event. But then also, I have two podcasts. So I have one that is called Speak Life with Karla. It's on all the major podcasting platforms. And it's basically exactly as it sounds. We are speaking the word of God over ourselves and into our lives. That is solely what that podcast is for. And then I also have one called Deliverance Diaries, from casting spells to casting out demons. And that is a testimonial podcast. It's also has its own YouTube channel, so you can catch it on YouTube. And it is different people from all walks of life sharing their testimonies of how Jesus pulled them out of so many different situations, events. And then, yeah, if you go over to Karla Callan Ministries.com, you can pretty much see everything else that I'm doing. I also do life coaching. I'm a kingdom coach, so I help people develop their relationship and their faith walk with God, as well as helping them get their lives organized. I also work with companies and entrepreneurs because I'm a very big believer in making God the CEO of your business, not you, but God. And through doing that, God will start to open doors. He will show how to price your prices, how to do all the things so that you stay in line and in alignment with God, because we have to be stewards of what He's giving us. It's not about us. He's allowing us to have these things. And so it is very important that God is in everything that we do. So that's pretty much what I'm up to. There's a lot more, but if you go to the website, you'll see everything else. So
Love that. Love that. And I've had an opportunity to check out her website. It's very thorough. It's very intense in terms of all the different products and services that she has offered up to you. So please do tap in. Please check her out. I'm sure if there's got to be something there that you could benefit from, or or something that you know of someone that could benefit from. So please do take advantage of this. This is truly a woman of God walking in her purpose, and just again, just trying to impact the world, doing it decent and in order and in alignment with God's will, making him the center of it all, making him the CEO of it all, making him the go-to, if you will. So, and that's how you have to do it. That's the key to success. So I definitely love the format. I definitely love all the things that you're doing, and I pray nothing but blessings over your life and the works that you're doing. Excited for all that God is going to continue to do with you. I truly do believe you're just scratching the surface of what he has for you. So, you keep pushing forward, pressing through, and I know God is going to be pleased in everything that you're doing. And for my listeners, if you've enjoyed our broadcast this evening, you've enjoyed our conversation and the powerful topics of discussion that we've had, please do subscribe, please share, please like, please comment, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is about. We want to inspire, encourage, uplift, want to be transparent, making it raw, making it vulnerable, holding nothing back. Not because we're looking for attention or anything like that, but we're trying to, as Karla said, speak life, trying to speak life, and just keeping it real with you. Not telling you anything that we heard, telling you things that we've experienced firsthand, understanding and helping you understand what it means to be in relationship with God. And if you don't currently have that type of relationship in play, today is a mighty fine day to make that decision. I promise you, it'll be the best decision that you ever make in life. So don't wait. He has plenty of love to go around for everybody. It's not just for me and Karla. He has plenty of it, and he's waiting to establish that relationship with you, to build up that intimacy in a way that is exclusive and special, just specially designed just for you and him to enjoy together. And not only in doing so, not only will that produce blessings in your life, but it will equip you to be a blessing to others. So with that said, remember, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and I thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, you keep fighting that good fight. You keep leaning into God. Build that relationship. Build up that level of intensity, and that intimacy, I should say, with him, and just allow him to love on you in ways that you have never experienced before, and equipping you and pouring into you like never before, so you can walk in your purpose, so you can have a reason to get up each and every day with your head held high, feeling joy, feeling peace, and just feeling the love of him all throughout, not only you, but in everything that you touch and do. So until next time, you take care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you on our next broadcast. Have a great rest of your evening.